Hello and good evening, everybody. My name is Charles Williams. For those who don't know me, or those who are watching this recording, that was Dave Francie singing Red Winged Blackbird, a nice Canadian songwriter and singer. So we are here tonight to talk about maps. And I hope that's what you're here to talk about. In particular, I want to talk about reading contour maps. How do we read them? What can we know by looking at them? Maybe a little bit about where we find them. And I would like this to be a really interactive session. So I'm going to present. If you have any questions along the way, throw up your hand, or if I can't see you or hear you, you can just unmute and say, hey, excuse me, I got a question. Because I really want people to, at the end of this, come away with some skills reading contour maps and applying them to your landscape. So welcome, everybody. If we're ready, I'll just get us started. Oh, maybe before I start, are there any questions or anything that you're really hoping to get out of this next hour as we talk about contour maps? If there's something that's burning, I want to make sure I touch on. You can either put it in chat or you can unmute, speak it out.
I'm just hoping to get a little braver when it comes to maps. I've been kind of chicken to draw and like really design, so I'm hoping this is going to be a good icebreaker.
Great, perfect. Like, well, how do we design with maps? How do we like take this and do something with it? Okay.
Charles, this is Renee.
Hey, Renee.
I understand how to read sort of the elevation change between the lines, but I don't know how to look at a map and just from looking at the lines know where the hills, the valleys, how I might know how steep, but how to just look at the whole map and understand what's that saying about a landscape.
Yeah, that's what we're going to focus mostly on, but perfect. I'll really kind of delve into like, how do we look at all these squiggly lines that look like noodles and see in them a landscape? So let's just jump into it and we'll start to see what we got here. So, okay. I'm hoping you see what would be a typical contour map. Move a couple things out of my way here. A bunch of squiggly lines. Hope you can see this. I'm going to scroll in a little bit here. This is common of a contour map, right? It's these squiggly lines on a map that tell us elevation. And, you know, some of the things to remember. So I'm going to say this, and then we're going to look at it and come back to it, is that each line is horizontal. They are absolutely horizontal, which means like at the lowest zero contour line would be at sea level, and then like filling up a bathtub as the water goes up, you'd make new lines, and they'd all be level along the map. So by looking at the difference between the lines, because we know they're all level, we can tell things about it. If the lines are close together, it's steep. If they're far apart, it's not so steep. Things like that. Also, we can tell things like, in this map, we have this big open space here that doesn't have any lines, and then a bunch of lines over here. Anybody want to guess what this big open space is?
Water?
Yeah. And in this case, it's really handy. It's the ocean. So this is water. Water's level, generally speaking. You know, there's tides go up and down, but generally speaking, it's level, you know, especially on a still day. But for contours, it is level. So this is water. So if you imagine this is blue, and then the lines go up from that. In this case, they're 10-foot contours. So every line we pass, if we were walking up the hill, we'd be 10 foot above the water until we get all the way up. And when the lines start to turn into circles, you know you're at a hilltop. So anywhere you see a circle, most likely is a hilltop. Anywhere you see a circle is most likely a hilltop. There's a few exceptions, but by and large, circles, hilltops. Ovals, also hilltops. These are, so this would be a hilltop, this would be ocean. I'm going to jump between a couple of screens here as I start to show what this looks like. So we're going to turn on. So now you can see the ocean is blue. And as we go up, the color changes as we head up slope. This round is going to be, hilltop. We got the ocean there. And if you look at this map, we move it over here, you can see, here's a good place to look at it. These green lines, see they're farther apart. And as you get to this area where there's red lines, how they're closer together. And you can see over here on the edge where these kind of red into orange are pretty tight, means it's pretty steep there. But over here where it's in green, it's pretty shallow. What we're going to do is we're going to tilt this a little bit and take a look at what that looks like. So here's our landscape tilted. And you can look and see. Now look at we're going to turn it here and look at these red lines over here against the horizon. Look at how steep that is, that angle. Now, if we turn it back the other way, over here, and we look at the green lines, you can see the green lines, how shallow it is. So you can really see that difference that happens from where the lines are close together to when they get farther apart. And it can be pretty dramatic in the shift of these lines. The other thing that you can tell about when you start to look at contour maps is you start to tell things like water movement. And this area that we're looking at right here has, back up here, has this thing going on where we have the blue ocean and the contour lines are coming around and they're not smooth here. See how this contour so it comes to a point and moves back? There comes this really tight point and then moves back, and then this contour line comes along and then boom, hits this really big point and comes back. It's not a smooth lobe. There's like these really pointy lines. These pointy lines, whenever you see a pointy line on a contour map, it's going to start talking about water flow. And the water is going to flow opposite these lines. So in the case of this map, if we did a connect the dots from this point to that point, to this point, to this one, to this one, to here, to up there, to here, to here, to here, you're getting a water course. So that's where water is going to flow. And this is what it would look like. And there we go. The water flows up here, and we connect it all the way. It comes up to this spot right here. So what we're looking at in this contour map is we see a stream. In the case of this particular place, it's a seasonal stream. It doesn't run year round. It's not very long, but it's a stream. It drains this area here, this area that the water falls on this hilltop. If this was a hill, the water would run down this side to the ocean. It'd run down this side until it got to this low spot. It'd pool there, and it has to go somewhere, and it goes out this way. And this is our little water channel that heads out. So you can look at a map, and whenever you're looking at contour lines, you'll be looking for a couple of features. First thing you're going to look for is big open spaces, which are going to be big flat spaces. You're going to look for circles, which will be hilltops, especially concentric circles. Like this hill, you can see these concentric circles. And that's a pretty classic hilltop. And then you're going to look for anywhere that has these pointy lines, like where the contour lines come to a point. We can look around this map and see, do we see any other places we see pointy lines that kind of make, very distinct points on them. Might notice some over here. You can see these get really pointy here. They kind of point and point, where you get a number of them in a row. And we'll come back to those in a minute. Here's one, a very pointy one, just a single one. And this is a one that's really good to notice when you see this on a map, a contour map. I'm going to shut off the color for a second so we can see it a little more clearly. We'll leave that off. So over here, we have this circle right here. It's a hilltop. Concentric circles, hilltops. You can see this side of the hill is steeper than this side of the hill. And we also see there's a hilltop here and these concentric rings. What happens is each ring you go down, you come down. And in this case, it is, you can see it's a ridge. There's a hilltop here. You can go down the hill a little bit onto a flat place, down the hill a little bit, and then you pop up on another hill. Let's turn this back on so you can see it. This is what it looks like. So you've got that hilltop with the circles on it, comes down to a flat spot, comes across, down, and then back up to this other hill. Now, when you're looking at the contour lines between these hills, try to move slowly, not give you seasick, you can see this one I was talking about, this pointy here. What that is what they call saddle. So you have a hilltop here. The water runs down this hill this way, and then it runs off this hill that way. And it needs to go somewhere when it pools up here. But this is a lot of water. The amount of water that's coming off this hillside is pooling off. It's quite a large area that collects water here. It all is focused in this one small area. And it's either going to run off one side of the saddle to the north, or to this side over here, or it's going to run off the other side here. And this is where it starts to run off. So all that water pools up here, it runs off, and it will, and a heavy rainstorm is probably doing a little waterway there. And when you look at contour lines, one of the cool things about a contour line is that water crosses these lines perpendicular, always, never an exception. If water is going to cross this purple line here, it's going to come directly across at 90-degree angle. It's not going to come off to the side and do like an angle. They always cross directly at 90 degrees. So water comes from this hilltop. If we look at it from top, 90 degrees, comes down directly across these lines, gets to this area. It has to go one or the other. This map isn't detailed enough to tell you where the difference is. It's probably right here. The dark spot is. But some way it turns, it's not going to go back uphill. It comes down. It's going to come right through this line. And the cool thing you can tell now from a contour map, and if you walk the lane, you can clearly see it, is it crosses this at 90 degrees, and the water's going to go down, and it's going to cross this next line at 90 degrees, right? So we know that there's water moving down this V, pretty much in the middle, and crossing here. And if you look close, do you see how the contour lines have these funny bumps here? They're not smooth. They kind of like a bump here and a bump there and a bump here. Like that's where the water runs down. It's going to run down right down that hillside. So you can see it comes down here, it has to cross at 90 degrees, and then you just project to the next line. Where does it go? Where does it go? And see how this line tips a little bit? So it comes across this one, but when it gets to that one, it comes this way. 90 degrees across. Comes to this line, 90 degrees across. And you can start to imagine where the water goes and where it concentrates, where it pools, where it flows off. So we're looking for those pointy places because they tell us where water concentrates and moves.
I have a question.
Yes.
With the previous pointy lines that you showed us, they're much more peaked, but over there they were more wavy. Is that the amount of water flow?
It is not so much the volume of water, it's like the intensity that the water will flow there. So in this case over here, the landscape falls down into really a creek. Like if you walk there, you would see the landscape very much sculpted and having a low trough. And these pointy peaks, the more pointy it is, the more troughy it is. So if you have like a real gully, it's going to be a really steep, pointy area. If it's just a very gradual dip, it's going to be not as pointy. That makes sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I was wondering what the difference was on that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I appreciate the question. So in this one right here, because it's not really a year-round stream, like water runs off here, but it stops raining, it doesn't run anymore. So it hasn't gullied out or made a water course in this spot. It just hasn't. But over, one more thing we want to think about. So you have pointy places where the contour lines are pointy, Then you have places where it's curved. So you can see here, this hill where it's curved here, this is the nose of a hill. Anywhere do you have the contour lines are like cruising along and then they turn direction, that's the edge of a hill. That's kind of the end of the hill. And you clearly can see it. That is the end of the hill. It wraps around the hillside. Anywhere you get those kind of lobed around lines, you're going to see, here they're kind of cruising along. It comes in, it comes out, but then it makes a sweep around. That is the end of a hill. And when you look, you can see it's an end of a hill. So you can these kind of lobed smooth lines. Whenever you see that aren't pointy turns, they're going to be kind of the end of hills, the edge of hills. Oh, the other thing about remember the pointy line thing? They point upstream, so the water flows down the points. The points don't point the direction of the water; they point the other way. So if you come and see them anywhere on a map, you can tell the direction the water is going from those pointy lines. It always goes opposite the direction they point. So you can see this pointy line that's here. The water is flowing down to the ocean. So we have those few things you want to remember. Circles are hilltops. Pointy lines, especially when a number of contour lines and pointy lines, is where water is flowing. Water always crosses at 90 degrees. And anywhere you have these lobes, they are the end of hills. The other thing you can tell some really cool things. So I'm looking at this map and you can start to see some things. Remember when I said, oh, there's some pointy lines over here, these pointy lines here. We had two of them that are in lines. They're like pointy, 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 pointy. Like you could connect them here. And there's a parallel one over here. Let's see if I can move it down. So we have this parallel line of pointy lines or pointy spots. This line here, and you got this line here. Anybody want to guess what's going on there? Why would we have two parallel streams?
It looks like a road.
Absolutely. You're right. Perfect. This is a road cut. And it's common on maps. You'll see these. And let me turn off the colors and let you see what it looks like when it doesn't have what I've got, kind of this enhancement on it. But you can clearly see somebody bulldozed the road. This hill probably originally continued across here and was this kind of rounded hill. And they bulldozed the road here. And these two lines aren't rivers. They're the drainage ditch, right? So let's turn those off and take a look at what just it looks like with the lines. Okay, take my map back flat. So when you look at a contour map, it doesn't have all these colors and kind of contrast these things, but you can clearly see there's these like pointy spots that are in a line, and then they stop. And then you have a set here that kind of go and then they stop. And the reason why they stop, of course, is the road goes up to here and then it comes down the other side. They're kind of rolling over a hill. But that's what a classic road looks like. Two streams, essentially, running next to it. Some other unique things you see here. You've got this little funny thing, like this little divot. Like contour lines are smooth. Glaciers moved across landscapes, waters eroded landscapes, and it really makes them rounded in shape most often. So when you get these funny things like whoop, bump, 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 and it's only in one or two contour lines, you can clearly see something's happening there. The question is, what is it? I'm gonna give you a chance to make a guess either in your mind, or if you want to say it out loud, you can say it. I'm gonna come back to this map with the enhancement stuff on it. It's human caused. And the reason why is contour lines are smooth. And when you have funny things like that, it's most likely done because some human did something. And in this case, my guess is this road had a little road that went off here and around the hillside, not over top of the hill, we're around the hill. And somebody had a barn or a house with a cellar and it's gone. So all we see is the old cellar hole. So if you're in New England or where I'm in Nova Scotia, where there used to be old homesteads and they'd have a barn and the animals were at the bottom of the barn. And then the top part of the barn is where they kept all the hay. This is a classic, like somebody had a structure here that had a basement that they could exit the basement onto the ground, and the top area you could exit off. So you could get onto either level without going upstairs. There's also this little circle here next to it, which is probably a cellar hole. This is probably a homestead. And you can see it written on the landscape through the contour lines because it has kind of these telltale markers of unusual shapes. The reason why you don't find holes that are concentric circles, and rarely do you find a concentric circle hole, there's hilltops. This is a single circle hole. You can have those, but you don't usually get concentric ones, is because if you get a hole in almost any place that is any size, it fills with water. And you don't get concentric circles. You get one flat plane, the top of the water. So contour map, usually, unless it's a bathymetric map, a map that shows the terrain under the water, when you have a hole of any size, it'll fill up with water, and we'll call it a lake, and it's flat. It's a single contour line. So if you see, a place where you generally don't see concentric rings making a hole because they fill up. That's part of what they are. Let me turn this back around so we can see it the other way again.
I have another
Charles?
question.
Yep.
Would the map look similar? Let's say the structure exists.
It depends on the type of contour map it is. Here, I'm going to put a couple of structures in which are common on maps, on contour maps. So there are structures on this.
Before you do that, Charles, just following up your other point, there are lakes up in the mountains. So
Yes.
those are holes that have filled, but how would that look like? Wouldn't it look similar on a contour that you'd have a circle at the top?
You do have alpine lakes, but think of all the alpine lakes you've ever been to. Are they at the top of the mountain, like the absolute pinnacle of them?
No.
They're usually in valleys. So if there was a lake here, what you'd see is you'd have a concentric rings to make hills, and then you would have this spot right here would have one circle in it, but it wouldn't be concentric as if it was going deep. It would be one circle, and that circle would, in essence, be flat. It would look like on a contour map, but it's going to look like a meadow. So a lake will often look like a meadow because they're just big flat spaces, because they flatten out and they don't have concentric rings making the lake unless it's empty. If the lake is empty, then you'd have concentric rings, but you don't ever have concentric rings because it fills up to the top with water. So you get one ring. And it's usually not at the absolute top. So these concentric rings point to a hilltop. What you would end up with if there was a pond, if there was a lake here, you might have a hill with concentric rings, but there'd be just one single ring here, and that'd be it, in a fairly open space.
Okay.
And oftentimes you find them on the side where you have lines. I'll show you another map that has a couple of ponds on it, so you can see what a pond looks like. There's none on this map, so it's a little harder to describe. But the concentric is the thing that tells you it's a hilltop, like multiple rings. Lakes are just going to have one. Was there another question? Okay, I'm going to turn on a building. Buildings. And let's turn off a couple of these things so you can see it in the map form. So typically on a contour map, a building's going to look like just a colored square. It's not, when they create a contour map, the way in which they're created is they're trying to get the surface of the Earth's surface. They can get kind of tricky when you get things like bridges and things like that. You can have some really interesting kind of topographic things going on because the surface of the Earth and the surface of the road are different heights. But for buildings, they usually just make them flat. So if you were ever to tip them, they're just going to be flat. And you're not going to see a cellar hole under a building. If there's a building there, they're just going to show it as a on a contour map is just going to be a feature that's going to be a box usually, unless it's a round building, and then it'll be a round thing. But you will never see what's underneath it. Unlike this one here, where you can see like those couple of bumps where you can see that something was going on there. If there was a building there, it would just be a black square on top of it. Yeah, like this, that thing that could be a knoll or a cellar hole. You wouldn't know unless you go there, but it would have just a black box on top of it. You wouldn't see the hole itself.
That one hole there, that could be a pond too, could it not?
It could. Yep. The only way you really know is if you went there.
Right.
The only way you'd know is if you went there. The reason why I'm guessing it's a cellar hole is because of this one here and proximity to the road. And I understand kind of the development patterns of this area, this actual site. I know this site. So, but you'd have to truth it. You'd have to go out and truth it. So other things you can tell when you start to look at these maps and think about it is like, what happens with water and air? You know, we know that these are hills. We know that the air is going to move down. So cold air settles. So anywhere that you have a water drainage. So here, this is a good example. See where it changes directions? It's not as peaky as this one over here. The one we were looking at that I said is a stream. But you definitely have this kind of like bump, bump, bump. This is a water course, but it's not one that runs year round. It's not like a river. It's not a stream. When it rains, water is going to collect there because all the water from this hillside is going to this place. All the water from this side is going to this place. It's just all going to collect and go down there. So this will be a water course. It's also where the cold air will drain. So it's also a cooler place in the landscape. And it's all going to come down here, and the water is going to go down here and end up over here. And eventually the water is going to come around here and end up over there, because that's what has to happen. It crosses perpendicular to these lines, you know, until it gets to the space. Could go that way, could go this way, likely going to end up here in this little wetland. So the water that comes off even this part eventually wraps all the way around the hill to get to the ocean, which is handy to know. In permaculture, we talk about swales, where we want to like collect water. And if you are trying to get water over to, you know, this area over here, one way you could do it is bring it from this wet spot over here. The way you do that is you follow the contour lines. So if I wanted to put water here, I was going to plant something, have some gardens there. I could follow this contour line over here. And if I put a swale here, I could collect water from this spot and I could run it along this contour line until I got over here. So you can bring water all the way around a hill. You can bring it from farther away. So we don't have to bring it up from this place. Like once the water gets down there, to bring it up here would be hard. But we could bring it around the hill if we wanted. So when we're thinking about when we talk about building swales, oftentimes we're talking about how do we use these contour lines to our advantage, so we can collect water in one place and move it to another. Where it's wet, can we move it to where it's dry, this drier hillside? Can we move that water from this wet area around? So we can start to move it around. Again, like water, it comes down here. You know, I was talking about this drainage between the two hills. You got this drainage between the two hills. You can bring it around, you know, catch it right as it comes off these hills, and you can bring it around anywhere on this contour line or below. So this one right here, this contour right here, this one that starts at the base of this hill, this is interesting because it's the same one that bases over this side of this hill. So that's a real key line if we're ever going to be trying to figure out how to move water on the landscape. So let's take any more questions about this map. I'll turn the other features back on. And then I want to go to another space and just look to this all again and look at another one and see what it looks like at a different area, different topography.
Charles?
Yes.
So each line is actually level?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Each line is level with each other, with themselves, and they're parallel to the one below it. So if we turn these off, Yeah, we should be able to. So, and these, let's do it this way. That might help. So, yeah, so all these lines are level, absolutely level with like the ocean level. And they're equal elevation going up. So the distance going up is 10 feet to that one and is 10 feet to that one. So they're all perfectly level. And the bottom one, of course, oops. This bottom contour line, this one right here, is the coast. It's where the water meets the land. That is the coastline right there.
I had a question about that big triangle area you were just on. Let's see if
This
I can
one?
pinch. Well, it's kind of like diamond shaped, just below the exit that's got no lines in it. Would that just be like a big, huge, it looks like a tooth with the root still hanging off it. Was
is my
that
hand
big
on it?
flat? Yeah.
This area?
That the one, shoot, I wish I had a pointer. Just above that where it's big, wide open. I mean, just to the right of it. Sorry, go back to where you were. Right there where your hand just was.
Yeah, this is the ocean. This whole big white space, that's all water.
And the white space that's below the stream,
Like right here?
the one in the middle that has more white space, like two lines to the right or to the left.
2 lines to the left, like 1, 2, like right here.
Wait a minute. Okay, so see the big open space that is below the stream, and one has a blue line on one side and a green line on the other side?
Yep.
What is that big wide open area? Yeah, right there.
Yeah, here, wait a second. You know what might help? Can you see the red dot?
Not yet, but my phone's lagging right now.
Okay.
There it is. There it is. Yeah. Red dot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a flat area. So basically what it is the ocean is here, the big ocean is there, and then you go up 10 feet and then there's a big flat space.
Okay.
And then you go up. So this is just a little above the ocean, and this is a big open place. And what is going on here? So imagine this. You have a stream that's coming down from down the slope between a couple hills, and then it slowly gets more flat. So it's steep up here, it's getting more flat. It kind of widens out right before it hits the ocean here. And when there's a big storm and the ocean comes up, it washes up here. And then when the storms go away, it washes back down here. If you have big tides, they might come in here and then go out. So this area is very marshy. It's full of plants. Not cattails per se, but a lot of plants that can tolerate salt water and fresh water. So you get all this plant growth here, but it's really marshy and kind of squishy right here. Because this is where all the water from this stream comes down. And if the stream floods, it dumps it here. If the ocean has a storm, it dumps it all here. So this is that really common on coastal areas where a stream meets the ocean. You get a lot of kind of plant growth because it's that transition space that is pretty flat. So this is just a big flat spot. That's all that's going on there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. The other thing that's going on, I guess I should note about this. Can I make this thing go away? So I turn on these colors in what they call a hill shade to kind of let you see the texture of the landscape. But this particular place, you had this road that we saw on the other side, on this side over here with the water along it. But on this side, you can see there's a road here that somebody ran at one point in time across this hill. So they came from what is a flat spot over here, went up a little bit, and then followed that contour line to have a flat road. So they used the contour line to keep this road around the hill, and then they ducked down and went across this creek. And they crossed that stream at a place that was between 2 other hills. So you can see on the contour map, what is this road here? And is it clear when you look at it right now that there's a road there?
I see it with the colors.
Yeah, the colors, you can kind of see it comes out of the green, goes that yellow, kind of follows, and it has that shade. I'm going to turn the lines off and let's look at it because it's really subtle on the map. But once you get an eye for it, you can see roads all over the place because humans have put roads all over. Like we've put roads all over the place. And you can notice them on a contour map. You know, you're looking straight down, and it doesn't, at first glance, you might not notice that there's a road there. But when you start looking at the map a little closer, see this thing where these lines are coming across and then they have this funny bump here, this kind of squiggle. And there's a squiggle here. I'll turn my pointer back on. Turn my pointer back on. Pointer. Yeah. So these lines come across here, and there's this funny little squiggle here, and a squiggle there, and a squiggle there. This is a road going uphill. It used to be just a smooth line, but when you flatten it, you make what kind of looks like a drainage as you put these squiggles on the contour lines. And then it kind of disappears because they stay on the contour line the whole time. So you can't see it when they're following the contour line. It disappears. But back at the other end of it, you know, you can see there's something going on there. This little bump there, something going on there. It gives you a clue humans did something there. And, you know, you follow those contour lines and you'll see that funny little squiggle again at this other end. Little squiggle on the line, another squiggle, another squiggle, another squiggle. Like that funny little squiggle that you get that's over and over in a contour line usually means that humans have done something. Often roads are what you're looking at. You know, and as you go along, you see a funny little squiggle here, like, oh, there's a squiggle there, you know. And if you walk the land, you'd find this is either a water course that is a kind of odd place for it, or humans have done something. And in this case, it's a pathway that somebody built out of rocks up the hillside. It's because these little squiggles will tell you because the line should be fairly smooth. But when you start to do little squiggly things, it invites you to go to the landscape and walk that space. Maybe, what's going on there? What happened? Okay. So I'm going to move on to another map and we'll walk through this again and see what we can see in a different place. This map is in Nova Scotia. It is coastal by the ocean. It's not very steep. I've exaggerated the steepness a little bit so we can see it a little better. So let's go and try. A different place altogether. Okay. Another contour map. Busier lines. So when we have busier lines, like there's more lines, it either means the contour interval is different. Instead of being 10 feet, it's 1 feet. You just have more lines. Or it's steeper. It's one or the other. And some of these lines are very close together. So what you notice when you look at this, actually, let me shut off a couple of things so we can see better. Okay, update, come on, map, there you go. So what you notice from what I've said so far, what are some things you can notice? Broad brush.
There's a lot of lines.
Lots of lines. Lots of lines. Absolutely.
I was
A
going to
few
say something
hilltops.
else, but my map went away.
A few hilltops.
Yeah, some hilltops. Sorry, I'll share that again. Come back
How do I
here.
get back to the map? Do I hit the whiteboard?
No, I just shut it off for next. It'll come back. That was my mistake.
Okay.
I was trying to allow you to annotate it.
Okay.
And I don't know if you can do it on a phone. On a computer, I think other people can draw on this screen, but
Yeah, I see one circle at the top, but it doesn't necessarily. Would you consider that concentric circles if they're almost all the way around?
yeah, So some of these, like a single bump and then a ring around them. This is like a hill. This is a shallow hilltop, and there's like a higher spot of it's a ridge with a higher spot and kind of these two circles and this oval are the same height. So it's a ridge top. It's fairly flat, but it might have one area that's a little higher than another. You've got some hills here. You've got a lot of these circles. It could be that there's a fair number of ponds, but because of the density of the lines, my guess is that there's just a lot of hilltops here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any water drainages?
Yes, to the left in the lower, where it's squiggly tight and then looser and then tight again, there are some pointy lines.
Yep. Anywhere you see these pointy things, so here I'll scroll in. Anywhere you see a set of, these are water courses, you can see one again here on this side.
What? Yeah, what about the one that towards the bottom of the screen that has what looks like hilltops or ponds maybe, but still pointy places and above?
Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of drainage, and these are all hilltops. And if we tip it, we'll get to see what this landscape looks like. So wherever you can see these, those lines becoming kind of pointy, so oftentimes it'll look like, well, let me just tip it and then we'll see. So we're gonna turn on our, and
What program are you using?
I am using a program called QGIS. And QGIS is a mapping software program, and I generate these maps in that program. Okay, on you.
QGIS, that's what you said?
Q. Yeah, Q, like LMNOP
Yeah.
QGIS.
Okay.
And I want to do one more thing before we do that. It's not doing. Pardon me for a second. Yeah, it's a handy program. I'm doing a class on how to use it. It's coming up soon, but it gives you an idea. So this is what the landscape looks like that we were just looking at on the map. So I'm going to go back to the map itself. I'm going to shut off the two things again. Okay, so we were looking at, these circles. So steady there. We were looking at circles. We were looking at these drainages. You can see where the lines have these peaky moments. And then we turn on the three-dimensional stuff to see it again. You gonna give me the thing? Where's my? Nope, that's not it. I'm losing my. Disappeared. I'll come back. Too many windows on my windows. Sorry about that. Zoom is putting things in the way of my what I want. There we go. Here, come back. Yeah, so the circles are all going to be hilltops. And all of those pointy pieces, because there are a lot of them, there are a lot of these like pointy contour lines, which makes all this folded drainage. So if we come over here, look at this for a second. You can see where you've got multiple streams coming together. So here, these all come together to this stream, picks up another one here, come together, and they kind of gets bigger because more and more streams are coming together. We can see that on the contour map. And what they're going to be is those peaky lines they're going to be those peaky lines that make the drainage. So you got our drainage here, you got our drainage there. Shut those off again so we can see it. Yeah, so you can, this is those peaky lines, the pointy ones. Now, if we scroll in here a little bit, actually, I'm going to scroll on this one. When we look at the peaked lines, wherever you see them, you can see these. The water always. I'm sorry, my program just closed unexpectedly. So one of the things to notice whenever you have those peaky lines, remember the water runs opposite the direction they point, but next to them will always be a lobe. There'll always be a lobed line next to it. Can't have two peaks next to each other. You have to have a lobed line in between it. And what I mean by that is here. So if you can see my hand, there's a set of pointy lines here that goes up and points back, goes up and points back. You can kind of see these, where the lines really condense here. There's another one on this side, but in between it is always this lobed line. The lobe is always going to be your hill. So whenever you're looking at a contour map, you'll be, and there's multiple lots going on, look for those pointy lines. Take a pencil, take a pencil and draw your line. Let me draw my line. Draw a line up one drainage, draw it down another drainage, wherever you can find one. And we can start to show you, in this case, the road runs down next to the water course. So you can start to draw out. It's often useful just to draw on your map, like where are those water courses going?
What do you mean by lobes?
Lobes. Okay, so I'm connecting all of the water course lines. So anywhere there's a pointy pieces, I'm connecting the points. And I know water is going to run down them. So between these set of pointy lines and this one here, there will be a lobed line here that is not pointy. A set of lines.
So just like a gradual.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not pointy, but the contour lines kind of wraps around the hillside to get to the next drainage. So it goes from this drainage, it wraps around the hillside till it gets to another drainage.
Okay.
So there always will be a lobe between any two, and you have to have that because you can't have two rivers with nothing in between them, or there'd be one river, right? You have two water courses.
I see.
And in between those, you have the hills.
So Charles, are you meaning if we look at those last two, the one you just took away, those last two, there are what I would call not super pointy, but fairly pointy, but with more space between them, between those two. Is that what you're saying indicates a ridge or a hill?
Yeah. Yeah, they should be not as pointy. They're going to be more loby as the ridge or a hill. So if these are the drainages with like minor drainage in there, let's look at, I'm just going to tilt it and then we can see it. So let me tilt up. Okay. I'm going to turn on the contrast a little bit here. That's okay. So when I was talking about these, this drainage here, and this one here, this hillside. So there are little points in here, but they're just the minor drainages. It's these not so pointy lines. If you come to a pointy one, it's going to be a drainage again.
Okay, so those ones between, that's what you're calling the lobed lines. It's not super pointy.
Right.
And
Right.
okay.
And they can have, they can be directional, like they're not super pointy in what they are, but they still, this is the problem with these annotations. Let's see if I can get rid of those. Yeah, so the lobed parts are just the curved lines between them. One of the ways to start to look at trying to figure out where your hills are and where your water courses are is noticing the difference between the really pointy ones and the kind of more curvy ones. The curvy lines are going to be these ridges, and the more pointy lines are going to be the water drainages.
Okay.
That's the, in this one I've overlaid the roads on it. Where the roads go on here, and the buildings, the black dots. But if we take the roads and buildings off, they're often hard to see unless you look really close at the contour lines, and then you can see sometimes where the roads are. But if the buildings are still there, they're not going to show up on the contour line because they remove them when they make the map. The part of the process of creating a contour map is to remove all the buildings so they don't show up. Okay, this one should have a pond on it here that we can go take a look at. I'm going to turn on the pond so we can find one. Let's turn those on. Okay, so there's some ponds over here. I'll shut them off and we can take a look at what a pond looked like. Oh, wait, before I do that. So, turn these off. We'll look here. The ponds we're going to look at. Our spaces on the map where the blue is. And we'll take a look at them here. So we have two here that we're going to take a look at. I'm going to shut off the pond. I'm going to look at them first, then we're going to come back and we'll shut them off and see. So you can see in this diagram, the pond, there's one here, there's a small one there, and a small one here. There's some wetlands. These are these greens and yellows, but the ponds are just here. So this is what a pond looks like. And now I'm going to shut off the pond so you can see the contour lines by themselves. There we go. Yeah, not very descriptive, right? They look a lot like the hilltops here because they're just a single round. But if either you have two, like this round with another dot on it, that's definitely a hill. This round one here where it has these two dots on it, either it's going to be a pond with two islands or it's going to be a hill with two high points on it. So this is the pond here and this is the pond here. That one, they labeled as a pond, but I'm not convinced it is, but it could be. If you look at how the contour lines go, it's a really, yeah, some of these are interesting things to look at and say, okay, so what's going on here that makes this one a pond? All the contour lines are staying pretty consistent here, except for right here, it opens out. and then it comes back to being very consistent, close. Somebody opened these out here, this line here, and put that pond in. So that's a human endeavor. This pond here exists because of how the hills sit. It's not at the top of the hill. It's actually at the bottom of a slope here and the bottom of a slope here. It's a natural low spot. This is a saddle between. Let's see if I can turn that. Can you see how that's a saddle between two hills? Like this is a low spot.
Uh-huh.
And see if I can turn that back on. Turn the pond on. We'll turn on maybe just that one. Give a second update. Yeah. So you can kind of see they place these ponds so that it catches the water off these hills, but not in the water drainage. Like this pond's going to drain out this way, most likely, out of the top of it. But it's, it's high on the landscape, but it's definitely has something to catch water and bring water in. This catch water, bring water in. Where these other ones, they're at absolutely top of the slope. So these are mid-slope circles where there's contour lines that are higher. And this circle here, there's no contour line higher than it's next to. No, there's another one. So this set of contour lines, it's round, but there's no contour line it's next to that's higher than it. But this pond definitely has contour lines. It's a circle with contour lines next to it that are higher. And how do you know that on a map when you look at a contour map that is not, is flat, just you're looking straight at it, is they'll have numbers on them. Yeah, they'll be numbered. So if you're looking directly on a contour map, these contours will have numbers on them. But even in this particular contour map, that circle right there, and you have another circle here, one of the two has to be higher because there's a set of lines between them. So you know that one of these two has to be higher. And the question is, which one is higher? And you can just start counting lines and it's going to tell you which one's higher. We're looking at what it's relative to. Like if you were to say, okay, so we know this is the bottom drainage down here, and you just count lines up. If there's going to be more lines you go up to get to that, then you'd go to that one. So it would tell you that if you didn't have numbers on it. So lakes are not at the top of hills because there's nothing to fill them. There's no way to fill a lake at the top of the hill. They usually needed something to fill them. Okay.
Charles, you mentioned the standard distance between the lines is 10 feet, typically, the contour lines?
No, it can depend a great deal where you are. Unfortunately, there's no good standard. The USGS often uses 20 feet, but not always. It depends on the scale of the map, like how zoomed in it is, and who makes it. Here in Canada, they use meters and not feet. So you have to know. So you really have to look at the key. I made these maps with, actually that first map was a 20-foot contour. This one, I believe, is no, this is a 20-foot contour. Yep. This one's at 20 feet is where the contours for this one are. But you need to look. That's the only way you know what the contour is, the interval is.
So there would be like a key for like distance and whatnot. You would know that way. Okay,
Yes.
got it.
Yep. Yeah. Any good map will tell you, if it has contour lines, what the interval is. It should also tell you what north is. It should tell you where it is, like the location of the map should be on it. It should tell you every symbol that's on it. If there's a black square on the map, it should say black square equals building or black square equals shipping container, whatever. They put blue lines, it said blue lines are rivers. All maps should have a key, tells you exactly what's on it. If not, then you're just making guesses and you don't know. So, like this will be a map when I put all those things on it. When I put my north arrow on it, my contour interval, all of my labels, my title, the date, me as an author, I put my name on it. Like that makes a map. a border, like to put a border on them.
What does the numbers represent?
The numbers, what numbers?
Well, you said all markers on the map have numbers.
Oh, all elements have labels. Sorry, if I said numbers, I shouldn't have said numbers. Labels. So like
I see. Okay.
on this map, if I have yellow here, on my key, I have to say this yellow thing means that, means wetland. I have a black mark, I need to say black equals this. I've got a white line with black on the edge of it. That needs to be, a 2-track road, and a dotted line is a pathway, right? I need to tell you, or you'll never know for sure. You can guess, but you never surely know unless the map tells you.
But you were saying that on some contour maps, on the contours, there are numbers.
Yes. Yep.
And so
yes.
you would see from those numbers if it's a 10-foot or 20-foot or 2-meter or whatever it would be.
Yes.
Even if you didn't look down at the key.
Yeah. And really a good map will do this for you. So you want the key to say 10-foot contours. So you're like, okay, I know they're 10 foot apart, and that kind of gives you that. But the number tells you this is 1,250 feet above sea level, and that's 1,260 feet. This is 1,270 feet, because you do not want to go and start at one part of the map and have to count every contour line to figure out whether your elevation is at this spot versus this spot. You want to have it labeled, and then you just follow the line and say, okay, so this is 1,260 feet. Great. And then you look at this line, it's like 1,200 and 1,300. Like, okay, so the distance between this line and that line is however many feet. So you don't have to count the lines. It's really handy to have them labeled, and they should be labeled on most maps. And maps with a lot of contour lines like this one, the typical way you do it is you have minor and major lines. So do I have some here? Yeah. So how I might do it if I were making this map, give me 1 second. I'm going to change a couple of things so it is really more stark here. Okay. What you do is you have 2 different color contour lines. So if you had a contours at 10 feet, how about that? There you go. So oftentimes, if you have a contour map with a lot of contours like this map does, it's going to take a moment to load. There's lots of lines on here. Is you have 2 different designations. One will be your primary contours that might be every 100 feet, it has a dark line. You can give it to me. And then every 20 feet has a light line. So you might have these dark lines. So you can clearly kind of count your elevation change by jumping the big lines. So like, okay, 100, 200, 300 feet, 320, 40 feet. So you can tell the difference of a drop. Okay, you're not going to show me on this line. See it here better. So like oftentimes you'll have contours have a lot of contour lines. It'll label each of them. There'll be a main line which will have some kind of rounded number, 150, something like that. And then the smaller lines will have the increments between that. So, if you had every pink one was 100 feet and every gray one was, 25 feet or something, is a common way to do it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if you are planning to use contour lines, you have this contour map, you can now look at it and know some things. Like, okay, so here's the red lines, the property boundaries. Like, this is my property. And I want to use, what I know about contour maps. I can look at it and be like, okay, so circles, likely a hill. So right, the hill. So house on a hill, hill. So this road is kind of running around where the hills are, the top of the hill. So I can see because the circles are hilltops. the road is running along the hilltops. Okay, because I can kind of see that's where the hills are. We can see that, okay, so there's, some water maybe running this way, and, some water running this way. We got some water movement. I see some drainage areas, so we got some potential water there. You got a water course coming down here. You can start to think about how you might, where you might want to put things on the land. If you want a new road, or if you're going to put another building, or if you're going to try to collect water. So, for example, this circle is a hilltop, and we've got lines. If we saw the numbers, they would be saying if we're going up or down. I am pretty sure we are going down, this downhill. It has a flat spot and then it comes uphill again. So if this is all going downhill, this road is going to collect water, because roads do that. And it's going to bring water down here somewhere. So we've got water coming down a road, and we could do something with it. We could bring it off one side of the road and try to have fruit trees here, or take it through a swale and bring it over here. Or we could try to bring it off this side, the other upside of the road, and move it into this drainage here. Or not this drainage, here we're going to move it into this drainage and have it drain away from our road, so that it doesn't cause a problem with flooding or something. So we can start to look at the landscape. Say, okay, so where does the water go here? We know that these pointy lines make a water course. It points the opposite direction. We know it's heading down this way. It's running parallel to our road. We can either move water from our road, maybe into that, to deal with problems with that, or we might be able to collect water from here and bring it around, from this water course that's here, and bring it, across a road somewhere over here if we wanted to. So you start to look at your map and see these things. Okay. Other thoughts or questions? We've come to about our time, but I'm willing to stick on for a while longer. Any questions or thoughts?
It takes the mystery out of it.
Hopefully.
I can, I've looked at these and have not gleaned a lot of information about the land from it. And now it has a whole nother dimension to it. So I really appreciate these tips on how to do it. And I can see there's so much more a person can learn.
And Charles, were you saying that, especially if it was a property you are going to do something with or considering, you'd look at a contour map maybe ahead of time and then take it with you and walk it to see, you called it truing it or truthing it or something.
Yep.
If you were using a contour map to hike with, though, you won't be able to truth it because you're on it, or I mean, or
Yes.
you're truthing it as you go. And I don't know if it's relevant because we're mainly doing it about permaculture, but that's the other place I've seen people use contour maps is hiking.
Yeah, I use it in hiking all the time. And this is actually where I learned to read contour maps, because I love backcountry, like off-trail travel, and needing to read these maps is really important. Like if you were going to walk, and there weren't any houses or trails or anything, you're walking this way and you're counting drainages to keep track of where you are. Like I've passed this drainage, and then I passed that drainage, and then I need to go down this knoll right here. But I don't want to go to the really steep area. So when it starts to get steep, then I want to go around here, and I should be able to find this flat spot here. Like I want to camp there. So yeah, it's something that the maps are generally true. The thing that you want to do on a property, because you're not just transiting through the space, you're trying to move from point A to point B. On a property, often what you want to do is you're going to be doing something fairly permanent. I'm going to put a building here. I'm going to plant a plant here, a tree that's going to last 100 years. You want to plant it in the right place. So you might want to go to this drainage. If we're looking at this drainage right here, we know this is the drainage. It goes along here. But when you go and walk to kind of truthing it, you might realize that at 10-foot intervals, you didn't notice that it actually squiggles this way and there's a giant boulder right here. or that, you know, at this part right here, that the drop, it's not an even drop where it drops evenly from here to here. It actually drops 10 feet right here, and then it runs fairly flat because it has a little waterfall there. Like, you want to walk it because it tells you more details than a contour map would tell you. Because it only tells you 10-foot intervals or 20-foot intervals, and a lot can happen in 20 feet. Like, it can really sway, you know, 6 or 8 feet one way or the other, and you'd never notice it on a 20-foot contour map. So you truth it to get the details. That's why you truth it. But for travel, it works really well. Like, if you can read the contour on the map and see where they are related to what you're seeing, it's very helpful.
Thanks.
Yeah. And, you know, some people take a contour map like this one, and, you know, it's great. And then they might fill in, actually zoom like on the map with a pencil, like actually fill in things that are missing, you know, add extra contour lines. They're like, I want a little more detail, or, you know, make little notes. But on properties like this, just as a side note, if you were looking to, you know, do things with that, you know, some of the other things that you can learn from a contour map, not going to go way into it, is things like the aspect. What direction is the slope? Is it a north slope or a south slope? Is it an east-west or east or west slope? You know, if it looked like this. Here, I'm going to turn one on. So here is where green is a north slope, east is yellow, west is blue, north is green, and south is red. So, you know, these are so you can be like, oh, I want to plant, I don't want to plant on a north slope because it's really cold there, or I want to be on a south slope where it's warmer, or maybe it's too hot on a south slope. You know, I want to be on the east slope so I get morning light, or maybe I want a west slope for evening light. So you can start to think about it with things like aspect, and the contour lines tell you that. Once you know what's north side of the map, you can start to determine what slopes, because they change at the ridges. You know, when I was talking about those lobed lines, I'll zoom in here. Where it lobes, it changes. Like, that's where it changes from being an east slope yellow to a south slope red. And then it also changes in wherever the water courses are. So you'll get, so this one, where that water course is, it's coming down here. That's the dividing line. The water course and the ridge are dividing line between what is the west slope and what is the more southerly slope. So you can do some other cool things with contour maps once you get used to looking at them and walking around your land with them. Any other questions? Trying to pull up the 3D map again.
Thank you very much, Charles. That was awesome.
Well, thanks for joining. Thanks for coming. For those who weren't able to be here live, I hope you enjoy the recording. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at charleswilliams@eatactivist.org, or come join the mapping class and learn a little more about it. I hope you all have a wonderful night.
Can you tell us when the mapping class is?
Yes, I can. The mapping class starts on March 19th. So I'll be doing, and in the mapping class, what we're doing is we're learning to use QGIS to make maps, the contour maps and vegetation maps. And so it's about how to make maps, not so much about how to read them, but of course you will learn more about reading them, but it's how the method of making detailed maps. And that's what that course is about.
And do they look like cute little permaculture maps in the end, or are they liney and look all scientific?
They can look either way, depends on your aesthetic. Though they are computer generated, so it depends on how you apply what you're going to do, but often they're going to look more kind of institutional unless you get creative. I've made some really interesting ones that are more creative, but you have to spend a little time adjusting your colors so you don't have kind of like red, green, blue, straight lines. And you kind of have to be a little more creative with your work to make it more flowy. But it can give, what often can give you is it gives you a base map. Like I got my contour map with some buildings, and then you take that, and then you take your colored pencils, and you make your rest of it on top of it. And now you have both things. You have a map that really is tailored to your site with some real nuance, with some good data underneath it.
Nice. And how long is that course?
It's 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay.
Yeah. And it's computer driven. You need it'll be on computer because that's where the program runs. Program.
Yeah, my computer just died, so I'm not sure. Not sure how I'm gonna deal with that, but I'll have to deal with that very soon. So,
Okay. Well, you're welcome to join us if you'd like.
okay.
But thanks for joining tonight, everybody. I hope you have a really great evening or morning, depending on where you're at. And we'll talk to you later.
Thanks,
Nice.
Charles.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.